guys, and welcome to another episode of the State of Flow podcast with me, Lena Kermode. And this little quick one is episode number 38, and it's going to be all about how to become more productive and our yin yang, feminine, masculine balance and duality within everything, and how to really harness that to set us up to really thrive and achieve more while doing less and just really find balance and flow. So let's dive into it. Okay, first up, apologies in advance. This is a little bit of a trial episode when it comes to sound. So using different media, different tools to record today because I'm still trying to find the most efficient way to upload my podcast as video format to YouTube in a timely fashion while living the farm lifestyle in Australia where reception is just super poor and internet connections are really bad. So I'm currently recording this as a video via Zoom to then directly upload to YouTube and use the audio to create the audio podcast you might be listening to right now. So bear with me. I got no idea how the sound is going to turn out after this. I literally have to turn off all the other internet devices and Wi-Fi's in the house to get a clear connection. So fingers crossed you get a decent sound, and we know after this episode and take it from there. Also, as a little announcement, for now, the State of Flow podcast is going to wind down a little bit to one new episode a fortnight on every Thursday as opposed to every week. I'm just really feeling the call for slowness and integration right now in so many different ways, like even in all the immersions and classes and things I've been running lately. I really found that in 2020 time has become something else as we're really moving towards more 5D consciousness, I guess, and time and space that is just this fabricated stuff around us that's making up this 3D reality. And as we're slowly ascending, it seems like everything has been a time warp, right? And I really noticed that in my immersions too, that I feel like people are really just craving, and that includes myself, to go slower and deep rather than fast and wide. Like, I feel like a couple of years ago, running similar immersions, it was all about putting more into a short amount of time, or we naturally got more done, and there was this more yang kind of drive. Actually, that's really suiting for the episode today. Whereas right now, I feel the more yin energy very dominant universally as well across the collective, where it's really about now running the same immersions for the same time frame. And it's really about slowing right down and just marinating ourselves in a concept for a while and really taking this integration time to go deep with one thing rather than spreading ourselves thin with 5 things. And maybe that also really has to do with, we are moving into this incredible age of Aquarius. There's a huge collective energetic shift happening right now. And we are moving from those patriarchal systems and realms that we've been living in for hundreds, thousands of years, and to the more soft yin feminine way of being again, the way of fluidity and this cyclic nature of life. So following that call that I'm certainly feeling myself, I'm slowing the State of Flow podcast down as well to one episode a fortnight. Also looking through the podcast stats, I noticed that a lot of downloads actually come over time rather than immediately, which shows it's again another sign of how overwhelmed and as in overstimulated we are these days. There are so many options for podcasts, for what to read, what to listen to, what to watch, what to talk about throughout, and we only have so many hours to do all that every day, and that reflects on the downloads too. They all come over time, but the things I'm talking about on here, they are often very simple yet profound, and they do have the potential to really help you to transform and elevate your life in so many different ways, but not if it's just something that's adding to the noise, just something that you consume next to those other 10 different podcasts in a row while you're on the way to wherever, and you're not actually taking any of those in. So that's also a reason for me wanting to slow the State of Flow podcast down a little bit, because we're now up to podcast episode number 38. So there's a lot of content already out there that I know still a lot of people have to get around to. So just following this calling of this current energy, and that, how fitting, is our theme for today as well. So how to become more productive, and looking at the yin yang balance and masculine and feminine aspect of ourselves. And maybe that sounds a little disconnected to you from the start. Well, what does my success and my productivity and efficiency have to do with yin and yang balance? Well, let me tell you. Firstly, this whole, you know, we can get really philosophical about it. This whole concept of doing something and therefore having to be productive and having to be efficient and having to be successful is such a 3D concept that's so bound to this physical world we're living in, to this patriarchal system of achieving, of making money, to pay the bills, to do the thing, to save up for whatever thing, and so forth, but therefore it is a result, or it is a feature of this 3D reality, right? And another feature of this 3D reality is duality, right? Day, night, light, dark, love, hate, negative, positive, and here we are with labels and boxes, which was my intention. But everything in this 3D world is based upon duality. We want to know what joy is and happiness if we've never experienced sadness. There's no day without night, and so forth. You get the concept, right? And yin and yang is exactly that as well. And everything, when it comes to duality, it's really not about lingering in one extreme and then in the other for too long. But if we look around in nature, we notice that everything that has duality has its cyclic flow of ebb and flow, right? Night and day. It's not like the sun and the moon are fighting of who's going to show up in the sky when, but they just have this natural, beautiful flow and dance of this yin and yang, this up and down, this ebb and flow, right? And it's just this natural, cyclical nature, and there's no fighting around it and no inconsistency. It just flows. And again, that's duality and balance. And duality and balance is what creates harmony and those frequencies that elevate us and that we want to live by. Therefore, duality and balance, duality and harmony is also what we need to be our most effective, efficient, and productive selves. So when we are in flow with nature and with our own nature, and therefore our own mind body types and our own requirements and needs at the time of the year, of our lifetime, and so forth, you know what I'm getting at. When we are in tune with our innate wisdom, with what we need right now with our own nature, then we realize that we don't actually have to work hard, but work smart. It is a legitimate thing. It's doing less, achieving more, as opposed to being over busy and underproductive, right? And to get there, we need to be in our flow state, to get into our flow state. And how do we get into our flow state is by really reconnecting to and harmonizing with our own nature, which is in sync with the nature around us, because we are part of the nature around us, as above, so below, as within, so without, correct? So how can we practically tackle that? How do we do less and achieve more? By really harnessing all our qualities and finding equilibrium and balance of the yin aspect and the yang aspect of ourselves, and the masculine and the feminine. Okay, and that has nothing to do with gender. They are those energetic qualities of our being, of our essence. We have all yin or feminine energies, qualities to ourselves. So that's our intuitive side, when we're emotional, when we are intuitively led, when we're creative, when we come from the feeling space and things like that, when we work with our womb wisdom. That's when we're in touch with emotions in general and can act from that place and from this heart space and be led by that. That is this more feminine approach, whereas our more yang or masculine aspect of ourselves is our rationality and problem solving on logic and critical and rational thinking and getting stuff done, whereas the feminine is resting and pausing and listening within. The masculine is going without and going for it and taking action, right? And so it really is important that we harmonize both those aspects of ourselves and that we call them both into the light. We have this, I know this whole feminine versus masculine thing is trending in our Western self-development and so forth for quite a while, and it's very easy to get caught up in, oh, I'm too masculine, I need to be more this, I need to be more that and less that. But it really is about having both those energies in a healthy moderation within us and knowing when to tap into which one for our greater good and for what we're needing right now, and therefore for being most successful and most productive. So that means basically, practically, that we need to balance pausing and integrating and stopping and self-care and doing nothing and just recalibrating and nourishing ourselves and taking some time off, are those yin aspects, with all our yang drive and passion and inner fire to tick the boxes and get things done. Because if you don't give yourself any chance, any time to ever recalibrate, to take it slow, to just opt out for a while, you can't restore and replenish your energy. So it's basically like leaving a tap running on your rainwater tank, right? And it's going to be drained in no time, versus turning the tap on only when you need it and then making sure it's sealed so that the next rain can actually fill the tank back up and it never even ends up being empty, because you are careful and mindful of your water resources. And that's the same with our very own energy. So instead of, burning the candle on both ends and waiting until your cup is more than empty, like desert dry, and then trying to replenish it, you want to make sure that your cup is filled up constantly, so that you constantly are connected to source energy and you constantly have life force, prana, ojas, your vitality really enlivening you and flowing through you consistently, so that you can give your best every day, but with ease and not with pressure and force and pushing yourself. So how do we actually do that in different, in little steps that you can implement? One thing you want to focus on in general and whatever you do is single tasking. And that's not just at work. That's when you eat your food, You're not watching TV, you're talking with someone. And even though it can be hard for, if dinner is our only time to catch up with our loved ones, for example, it's something we're so used to in the West, to have big discussions around the dinner table, but maybe try to have a quiet dinner and then talk before and after your food, and just notice the difference. Notice how it actually settles the digestion very differently, and it creates a lot more digestive comfort. Notice how you taste your food more, and the more you tune into the taste and the more present you are with what you're eating right now, the more nourishing it is on a holistic, wholesome level, and also gives you this energetic nourishment rather than just the actual, physical nutrients. So single tasking does not only come in that when you're at work and you focus on one thing at the time, so don't try to not have 13 tabs open, but if you catch yourself out doing that, then okay, got a lot going on down up here, I'm just going to close down anything I'm not doing right now. Do one thing at the time, finish it next, right? But also in your free time. When you go into nature, walk your dog, maybe don't take your headphones and listen to music, but just allow all your 5 senses wander out and experience the direct environment you're immersing yourself in right now. So single tasking in anything. When you're cooking, make it a meditation, like feel and knead and work the food with your hands and take in the smells and the sounds and the scents and the sides of the food that you're preparing. And you will find that the more mindful and present you are, aka the more you single task, the more restoration you actually find in many things you do. Like cleaning can become a meditation and almost a self-care practice as opposed to a chore if you're present with it. Same as cooking or having your food can be a mini retreat. It can be heaven as opposed to just gulping it down and not even tasting anything because you're scrolling your Facebook feed and your thoughts are somewhere completely different. Then another thing is stop writing big to-do lists. And I've been a sucker for that too. And now I'm not actually, yeah, not really ever writing to-do lists anymore that I try to stick by. I will write one maybe once a month or something where I have like my big goals on. I'm like, okay, cool, over the next few weeks, I'm going to focus on this and that. But I used to write myself to-do lists of like 20 things a day and then wonder why I'm feeling shit by the end of the day and not have gotten any of them done or only 3 or 4, which is an achievement. But if there's 20 on there and you've only done, 3 or 4 of those tasks, you feel like you've lost. And in fact, you set yourself up for failure the minute you place all this huge amount of different things onto a to-do list. It's so overwhelming that we procrastinate around it for starters. Secondly, we have 24-hour days. So realistically, if you want to have a good night's sleep, you sleep for about 8 hours, right? That only leaves about 16 hours. Let's take away another hour in the morning and an hour in the evening to actually prepare yourself for the day, get out of bed, do your self-care and so forth, and in the evening to wind down and to go to bed. So it leaves you with 14 hours. Then averagely, many of us work, say 6 to 8 hours a day. Let's go with 8, the typical 9 to 5 thing. So 16 hours, 14 hours minus 8, that leaves us with 6 hours, right? 6 hours outside of the regular work and just sleeping and getting ourselves from sleep to waking and from waking to sleeping. Leaves us with 6 hours. Then you might have kids, you might have a partner, you might run a business on the side of your work, you might actually have hours that are all over the place, or you might be teaching in different places, and all things where we think like, oh, for example, my yoga class, I'm like, oh, I'm only teaching a 1 hour yoga class every Tuesday. But really, it takes up 2.5 hours of those days because I prepare myself, I drive there 20 minutes out of the way, I stick around before and after the class 10, 15 minutes. That's easily 2.5 hours gone for an actual activity that takes an hour. And I catch myself out on that frequently, that I totally underestimate time. That I do that, oh yeah, I teach yoga for an hour, I will be there at 6:30. But this is bullshit, Lena. Your class finishes at 6:30. How are you going to be there? But it's such a common thing for us to do that, to try and squeeze so many different things into a day that doesn't actually have much to it. So what you practically want to do is grab those to-do lists and don't, or rather minimize them, and only put 3 to 5 tasks on your to-do list per day. And they should include, if you are the one cooking dinner, then put that on the to-do list, or if there's a whole lot of washing you need to do, put it onto the to-do list along with your work appointments and your other appointments. Put all this random stuff onto your to-do list too, because that's what life is throwing at you. And especially when we don't schedule that stuff in, then you actually get sidetracked by it and be like, oh shit, I forgot. I'm quickly going to do the washing. I'm quickly going to do the dishes. I'm quickly going to do this and that. And out of the sudden, you've quote unquote wasted 4 hours with all those things that you didn't actually sketch into your list first, that you don't get anything else on your list done, that you set yourself up for failure again, that you go to bed in the evening and say, oh, I totally forgot the day had 24 hours only. Or I've got nothing done. I've just procrastinated and totally wasted my day, which wasn't the case. You've just started wrong with too many things and having yourself over scheduling your times before you even get out of bed. And there's no space that you've left in your day for life to just happen, right? So practice to schedule only 3 to 5 tasks per day, and that includes your average chores and your fluffing around at home, whatever it needs to be. Put it on the list and tick them off, and just notice how it makes you feel so much better in the evening when you see this list and it's actually all ticked off, including all the life things. That's how you set yourself up for winning. Then having a morning routine. Start your day on the right leg. That was actually one of the most listened to episodes to date of the State of Flow podcast, which was episode number 11, Morning Routine 101. So go and check it out if you haven't already for a little refresher on why and how to morning routine. But you really want to start your day on the frequency you want to continue and finish it on. So it's so important to, instead of jumping out of bed with your alarm or late and then rushing around, not having any time to look after yourself in the morning to make it to work in time or whatever, and just basically head first into cold water, start into your day kind of thing, rather than starting slow, without rush, without stress, and taking a moment to really tune in with yourself and take time for yourself. Meet yourself first, especially in Australia. It's this, you have this little thing, this little hey, how you going, when you see people on the street. No one really means it, but it's just, hey, how you doing? Yeah, not too bad. How are you? Again, most people don't mean it, but we just throw it around as just such a phrase without meaning all day, every day. Hey, how you going? How you doing? But when you honestly ask yourself, how am I going today? And so imagine the power if you do that first thing in the morning before you meet the external world, meeting yourself. And we're actually going to go more into that in the next episode of the State of Flow podcast, which is going to be all about external versus internal focus. That will be episode number 39. But so yes, start your day right with the morning routine, with meeting yourself first, settling into yourself first, and notice, how am I feeling today? Okay, cool. And according to how I'm feeling, this is how I'm going to go about my day. And that was set you up so much differently, rather than rushing out there, not having a clue what's going on inside of you, and then draining yourself from the start. It's like ripping the tap open, and before you've noticed, you actually rip the tap off, and there's just free flow of energy pouring out of you, and you're depleting yourself. Another thing is self-care. Self-care, self-care, self-care. Self-care can look so different for each and every one of you and us, sorry. And it doesn't, there's no one size fits all recipe to self-care, what it should look like. If yoga and meditation is not your thing, then don't do it. Then maybe find your meditation in your daily surf, or walking your dog in the forest, or going for a bike ride, or whatever it is. And that's self-care too. Maybe you find it as you pick up a paintbrush or crochet or be creative or whatever it is. Maybe pouring yourself an Epsom salts bath or reading a book. Okay, but try to implement some sort of self-care every day. Ideally, at least an hour of self-care, which, my definition of self-care really is to just do something for the sake of making you feel good, for the sake of having fun, feeling joy, feeling nourished and comforted, nothing else. Otherwise, not outcome orientated, not doing things for, just for the sake of being, of enjoying, right? That's self-care. And then ideally, you have more quality self-care practices than others. For example, yes, a glass of wine can feel like ultimate self-care, but given that it is going to cloud your mind and give you a little hangover and get your body into a little bit of stress that it wouldn't need to be in, and it's actually going to deplete your energy the next morning, it's not actually the appropriate version of self-care. If you could instead maybe have a cuppa, read a book, have a relaxing bath, which leads to a quality sleep, which leads to an abundance of energy and a good mood in the morning, which sets you up for another great day ahead, right? But that's up to your discernment. And the last tip is to listen within first. Always listen to your body. And that's what I already said we're going to go further into in the next episode. But it starts with, in the morning, take a few seconds to just take a few deep breaths as you get out of bed, or before you get out of bed, to just check in and notice, hey, Lena, how are you going today? How are you feeling? How's your body feeling? How's your mind feeling? How are you feeling emotionally? And then listen to that, especially for women. We've had an episode a little while ago on why the female menstrual cycle is a privilege, and that's another reason why it is. Because if you're on your or if you are menstruating on your period, you will, and you check in with that, you notice you are more depleted, you have less energy, you're supposed to rest. And if you tune in with that first and acknowledge it, then you will schedule the rest of your day like that. And not everyone might have the luxury to just can their work for the rest of the day, but it's still about how you go about the rest of the day, the energy with which you approach it, that makes a difference. You know, try to leave spaciousness before and after work if you can, so you can really create resting periods and do things slowly rather than overscheduling yourself. Don't take on extra projects and commitments and things like that if you felt in your body first and noticed you're not feeling up for it, rather than ignoring your body and keep sprinting until you actually fall, and then you cannot get up anymore. I think a classic example for that is this outdated way of working your bum off for your entire year for 2 weeks of holiday by the end of the year. And you go and book this holiday, and you probably have booked that a year in advance. And then you finally go and you envision that you're just going to, do all those amazing things and take in all the environment and nature and culture wherever you're going to be. And then you actually get to that holiday and you just find yourself exhausted or even get sick for most of it, and you're just so flat because you haven't actually looked after yourself for that entire year leading up to the holiday, that what you envision to be a restorative phase and fun and adventurous is literally just bedridden recuperation time for your body that's so depleted. So don't rely on the 2-week holiday. It's not going to be a holiday. It will be your body literally recovering from being half dead if you don't do your self-care throughout the year. You're best off having a mini holiday, 5 minutes, half an hour every day through your self-care practice, rather than fully putting yourself last and fully overriding your own needs until you get to those 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever, holiday once a year, twice a year, right? It's all about slow and steady and little steps at the time, but being consistent, and less is more than giving it all up for the big vision at the end. That's just not going to work out the way you saw it if you didn't look after yourself on the way. And all those things, again, self-care really is the summary, if we boil it down, of how to be more productive, because we are living in a very yang, a very active, a very productive, outcome orientated world. Here, same as the phrase, hey, how are you going? Another one is, hey, how are you going? You keeping busy? Oh yeah, good. You're busy? Yeah, great. You're busy is great. Why is busy great? Who started with that? It's like we're in society's praising us if we're working 80, 60, whatever hours a week, if we juggle 5 different businesses at once and we're totally burned out. It seems like society is only acknowledging you doing life right if that's how you're doing life. Whereas if someone's like, hey, how are you going? You keeping busy? I'd be like, oh, nah, I've actually just been laying on the couch for 3 days, drinking teas, reading books. And people don't even know how to respond, because there's this weird stigma around that of being a bum, being lazy, and so forth, which is so not the case. And that's this outdated system we're slowly starting to move away from. We're slowly moving into this more intuitive, softer, feminine realms of really listening inside, and therefore harness our energy and replenish our energy constantly, so we can always show up as this best version of ourselves. And because we then always have consistent full energy and a clear mind and creativity and access to our intuition and our inner knowing, because we do restore ourselves regularly, we give ourselves those yin periods, those pauses and integration times and down times between activity regularly, we will be more productive, we will be more efficient. It's hands down, over the last few years, the more I say no to things that I don't want to do, the more I say no to things I know are going to stress me out or are just going to actually create a hectic week for me, the more abundance I attract in, the more quality time, the more ease I enjoy literally every day. And I feel like I'm just doing what I want to do. and I'm making, my income is the most consistent it has ever been. And meanwhile, I only do what I love. I have the most time I've ever had, just beautiful quality time to really enjoy. Every time I say no to external things that are not serving me right now and say yes to me, and every time I listen to, okay, yes, I could cover those classes for all these people today, but my body is really not feeling it, and I honor my body first, it will come back at me. And I will attract in clients next week that pay me double as much as those classes that I decided to not cover. Just as an example, it does feel so counterintuitive at the start when you're like, fuck, I'm so busy already. How could I stop? But when you're so busy to a point that you're actually so overwhelmed, you don't even know what to do next, and you end up being flustered and totally not efficient because you're so overwhelmed, then it is time to stop. In fact, every time you feel like, fuck, I'm so busy, I don't even know where my head is, that's the indication to stop. Just go put it down, leave it for an hour, leave it for an afternoon, leave it for a day, come back to it. And notice how you come back to it with a different energy, with a different approach, with a different mindset, and you just bring more quality to whatever you're doing. All right, beautiful humans. I would absolutely love to hear how you resonate with that. So if you're watching this on YouTube, just put it in the comments. Otherwise, do join us in the State of Flow community on Facebook. That's our free Facebook group that you can, just opt into. And you'll also find me on Instagram, Lena Kaliyah Ayurveda. I would love to hear your thoughts on that, your experience with being perhaps overworked and underproductive, or overbusy and underproductive, and your own little tips on how to become more productive and how that's playing out in your life. Thank you so much for being on here. And I can't wait to now see you, because this is a video recording, so you will find it on YouTube, and fingers crossed it has actually worked out without skipping and it is a good audio. And if so, then you will actually get to see me in this podcast setting on YouTube every other week. If not, then I looking forward to being in your ears again on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you're listening. If you do use Apple Podcasts and you do enjoy this podcast and get something out of it, I would absolutely appreciate a review and a rating, and that will help us to just get this message and get this content out to more people who might actually really need this right now. All right, beautiful light beam, I can't wait to see you shine. Until next time.